We are live.
Okay, welcome everybody, fellow Downtown Advisory Board members to our July 27th meeting. Thank you for being here. We do have a quorum. And we're going to start with our call to order. Starting with myself, I am present. Kirk Sun, here. Alan Pollock, here. Charles Weathers. Wandry Robertson, here. Chrissy Birch, not present. Rory McManus, here. Ryan Bechtel, not present. And then Sarah Minogue,
Here.
Present. Moving forward to agenda item number 2, the approval of our agenda. I ask for a motion there unless there's any discussion on it. Seconds. Unless there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the agenda as is, say aye. Aye. Those not, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 3, the approval of minutes from our May 25th meeting.
Approve our minutes.
Second. 40 seconds. Unless there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes as is from the May 25th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those not, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 4, public comment. We have some guests today, Sheree. All right.
We do, oh, Bill and Luke, okay.
Bill, don't leave.
Okay, so, Councilor Chioka is here, and she wanted to say a couple things, and then Bill, again, that opportunity is for you, if not, you're welcome to just visit.
I'm not clear, so that I'm
Want
not,
to take a seat?
no, I do not.
It's yours.
This way my back is not to the building, so, I don't necessarily have anything to present, but I certainly would be happy to answer any questions. I'm here because we need to be. So, anybody have any questions with recent events? Do you know that there is a referendum going on for the employee payroll tax? And that it currently has, as I last read, about 4,000 unverified signatures, and their goal is 6,000, or did I say 4,000 signatures? So they have until August 9th. Based on how fast they're getting signatures, my guess is that will come back to us. So we'll see what happens after that.
Can I ask what your continued approach to communicate to downtown Salem, or what your approach is to inform the process, more information for residents?
So the information has been presented to our city council, and really we're just wait and see what happens. I certainly know that each of the councilors probably have their thoughts on how they would want to move forward when that 9th, on August 9th is the last date. And I think that city staff leadership is also getting ready to figure out the next approach. So how do we keep you informed? At this point, we're just kind of waiting. We're on hold as well. So there's not much to really share. I would guess that by the August 14th meeting, I would encourage to watch, because that's when I'm sure the information will come to us. We see it on the agenda on the Wednesday before, and we actually get reports on Thursday. So then we have a few days to kind of analyze it. And that's when, as I say, I think each of us are probably already trying to formulate some thoughts on how we see moving. Does that, it didn't really answer your question, but it's basically, we don't know yet.
To give you a little more feedback on that, and by continued approach, just things that I have seen on social media, a couple of posts on regarding the payroll tax, but also there was a Latino Business Alliance meeting that recently happened, and I did receive some feedback on it. So I was curious as to how your further approaches were going to be, because I don't feel like it was received maybe appropriately. Just from comments that I heard back on that specific meeting, was told that it wasn't translated very appropriately to the members there at that meeting. I wasn't there personally, but I did hear quite a bit from it from just other business owners. So I wonder what other approaches you're taking other than social media to now inform people that this payroll tax is a possibility for.
Oh, as far as a possibility, I was thinking the referendum. So it's been available on our website. And I think that people have to go and look it up. As far as how it would be administered, those are some of the details. The details are not completely down here if it should be enacted or pass. It would be somewhat similar to the Eugene payroll tax, or really it's somewhat similar to the transit tax. It's already something that's on everybody's income when they get it. There's a 1% transit tax. And so it would be very similar to that in the sense of how the employers would manage it. Again, I don't know, I'm answering your questions, but I think what you're wanting someone to come to the businesses and tell them about it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it just seemed that after the last meeting that you had, which obviously a lot of people were informed of it and people were talking about it and it ruffled others. But it seemed that very immediately after that, the social media post came up, the Latino Business Alliance meeting conveniently happened to be there. And I'm not sure if it was already pre-planned for that presenter to be there because they don't let us know until we get at that meeting. But my question is just to ask, is that the same approach that you're going to continue communicating with the city of Salem on how, hey, here's a payroll tax, or?
So we've been talking about it since April. We've been presenting the information to businesses and to the community. Communications is so difficult. You know, we have so many forms of ways of communicating, and it's a struggle because oftentimes it ends up on social media and sometimes it's not accurate information. And that gets very frustrating. Sometimes it's accurate information and then people aren't sure. And we are trying to improve, the city is trying to improve their communication and styles, but it is not easy to get the information out to everybody in the format that they need to see and have and understand it. If there's something specific or if you're wanting someone to come to a group, then I would like to know that, and let's see how we can get that information to you.
Okay.
Sometimes in preparation, like a question, Q&A.
What's the approach to? I feel the approach is also could also be received. I appreciate you sharing.
And again, it's certainly email me and let me see what I can do for you. It might be some counselors, it might be some city staff that can answer questions. I don't know, but let's talk about how maybe we can do it. Does someone else have a question?
So I understand that August 9th. Signature starts the validation process.
I think August 9th is when we'll know. I think they're going to start validating. Or I heard that August 9th. You know. Well, we're going to have to know fairly fast because November is not far away. And then, of course, then the decision is, would we even do it in November? Would we wait till May to do it at all?
So does that become the city's choice?
Well,
Doesn't the referendum force it on them?
I think what the referendum does is reverse, it basically nulls the vote, and then we have to go back and make that decision. So that's why I say I think it'd be, and I think it's going to be what, August 15th. We'll be the meeting that will probably be making that decision again. And so also another issue is if the city cannot campaign for a vote, and so then that falls on the shoulders of councilors, business people, donors. And we've already kind of calculated that to run a campaign would cost us $100,000. I said I'd pony up some money, but it certainly doesn't even get close to $100,000. But you know, it is certainly, that's just a little piece. We'd have to evaluate whether or not we would be able to fund something. And so then that's why if we decide that we want to take it to the voters, it might have to wait till May so that we have time, so that we get out the information. We find all the different ways that we can communicate to help explain what it is, how it would happen. Because I think it is a big issue. It's just like, hey, you're gonna tax us, but I don't understand. So there's a lot of education and so how do you do that? It costs money to do that. And so those will be some of the factors. It will cost the city about $10,000, whether they put it on November or May, because that's just putting it in there. But if we have any statements on the pamphlets, then every statement is $400. And then of course, running the campaign, getting out literature, having meetings, discussing it. That we've already estimated. We know that it will be at least 50, and I think it'd be more than what we did on the bond. The bond was 65,000. So, any other questions?
Was council anticipating the referendum or expecting it? Or was it a surprise?
Not with the turnout that came to the I don't think that it was a surprise. And it came 2 days later. So he said it was something like that. So no, it wasn't necessarily.
Then follow-up question, in the event that things don't go, if it does get reversed, is council measures as a contingency plan to identify how things?
I know I have ideas, but those again, won't be discussed until we're at the next step. We'll probably have to have further, meetings and some preliminary meetings to look at options, and then councilors will weigh in on what they think might be a direction to take. And then it would be, and those are in small groups because we can't meet as at large council. So it'd be kind of like feedback and ideas, and then we'll all come to council and discuss what potential.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Bill, please,
Come up here.
wherever you want.
Okay. Yeah, Bill Huntley is my name. I live right across the war zone in the black comment there. And I'm a little concerned, and maybe this is the appropriate time for this, but I understand that the new building eventually will go up there. The new deck doesn't have any, or may not have any off-street parking. I'm already concerned because now, even on a non-event weekend or a non-event day, you know, the parking's a little tough on the street there because of the carryover from the apartments that are under provided. And it doesn't seem, you know, it's not getting any better, probably getting worse. And then the other concern I have is the alleys. The alleys seem to be going to be a fairly predominant portion of that. And if you look at the other alleys behind the new builds that have been built, like the hotel and other set of apartments there, they start out looking nice first week or so, and the garbage is contained and it's all blocked off. But then within a week or a month, it's a disaster. The alleys are a disaster because we have limited garbage area, recycling area, limited storage area of pallets, and of course the homeless and so forth, big goods going out, move in. But so I think there needs to be some provision made on alleys so it's wide enough, garbage, etc., is substantial enough so it's kind of out of the way and it's not target of gates that are left open and garbage bins in the middle of the street or in the middle of the alley and garbage and stuff going on. So those are really only my family comments.
Thank you for coming, Bill. Thank you. Okay, is there any other public comment? Okay. Counselor and Bill, thanks so much for coming today. You feel free to stick around if you'd like, or you can go on your merry way if you'd like to. I know you got a big commute, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can make it.
Okay, agenda item number 5, action items. This is exciting. Approval to recommend 2 downtown advisory board members to the Block 50 Downtown Salem Opportunity Evaluation Committee, former UGM staff run ABC music sites. Sherry?
Very excited, moving forward. And again, I'm gonna go back to most of you were here when Brian was here talking about conflict of interest. So those that are interested in being on the evaluation committee, if you have any relationship with this at all, it might be something that you would not be interested in being on the evaluation committee due to conflict. But again, as assistant city attorney said, it's up to you to make that decision on if you have conflict or not. I appreciate whoever is going to be on the committee, their insights. So I would turn back to you, Josh, to have people make nominations or indicate their interest. And then we can vote on those their interests.
Sure.
Well, I'd be excited to be part of it, but I will have to abstain from being part of it. Because we may be. Recuse. So. Excellent.
And as much as I would have to participate as well, there's a chance that I eventually conflicted as well with some of the applicants. So I'm not going to be able to participate in the committee as well.
Just to verify, the applicants need UGM some. Those.
No, I
Okay.
don't know who they're gonna be. So right now, communication out to the public that says, hey, we have these opportunities. I would love to hear if you want to redevelop it and what would your concept be? So part of what they need to share with us is who they are, what their experience is, who their team is, because that's a big piece of making that successful or not. So if, let's say, like Kirk said, I'm a developer, part of my team is CB2 architects, then he would be financially compensated if that project moved forward. Sure. So, or I'm the realtor and I could possibly get some compensation for being a part of that. So that's why we're narrowing it down right now in who might in this community be touching that in some way.
Role of the evaluation committees, concepts and prioritize them.
Yeah, so basically and I sent it to you, but if you look at what's required, then those things that are required, the evaluation committee is going to look at those, against what we said, we're looking for, and then those individuals or those groups that makes the cut for scoring bias would be then brought into the discussion. The evaluation committee. So the role of the evaluation committee would be probably twice they would need to participate.
Who's on the evaluation?
I need to get confirmation, but right now my understanding it would be the mayor, Councilor Nishioka, Councilor Stapleton, Kristen, 2 DAB members, Lisa, Deputy Administrator of Planning, Shelley and myself.
So I have a question, Sheree. My project, which we're within these boundaries.
Your project is your project and has nothing to do, this is across the street, we took down those
Right.
buildings.
Right.
So unless you were going to submit something to build over there, you would not have.
Is it possible for me to take time to review what you sent, to see if it's something that needs? Or I would like to participate or consider.
Well, our next meeting is August. It's, again, the board would have to make that decision to defer it to an action in August. The timeline for proposals coming in is the end of August. So that is an option because until we get those, we will have evaluation. But it is up to the board and you all would be.
Sarah has some interest.
I would definitely do it.
I was gonna say, Chrissy and Ryan are here, so we could just pick them, but. You don't show up. But, Sarah, it sounds like you want to process this a little bit more, it sounds like you're interested in it, and it does sound like you can. Just the August meeting, actual approval to recommend.
Yes, but I'm going to just say, it hasn't always been easy in the summer to get a form. So it will be problematic for me if for some reason something happens. Yeah. So.
It's gonna be my birthday.
Yeah, sorry, I only get one of those a year.
I don't want to be more.
That would be the only thing, because then I wouldn't have.
That's what I want to make sure is the time commitment, making sure those parameters meet.
Well, we would just answer that right now. Your question was what, it's a list of the things that we've already made a while ago. And you're gonna get proposals and good, do I like these things? What do they score on the list? So it's just, you wanna be a person that considers it. What is the commitment, I guess, to your question?
Just the time commitment in general,
It's after 2 meetings.
if it is additional to the
Well,
Thursday.
there's the 2 meetings, but Charles is right. Let's say I have 30, which would be amazing, 30 different groups want and are interested in that site. Then you would have 30 to review against, but that's not, Charles is right, there's not a lot of things that you're reviewing against the criteria. And then you would bring that information, your scoring results to the committee. But you would have the time that you would need to put into looking at those that came in.
I also. Campaign speeches. This is a silly question, just to further, maybe help understand this. In the RFP Q, XYZ, whatever it's called, did they have to like summarize how they meet those criteria, or is it, you need to read the thing and digest it and see how they met the criteria? I know you shouldn't want to read the thing and digest it, but we had our criteria, did they say like, say for me, that's sometimes parents need to do that kind of thing.
Again, there's the goals
Right.
that the board created therein. But there's also what is your experience level? Have you only done stuff between 10,000 and 2 million? 2 million and 10 million, 10 million and 30 million, 30 million and 80 million? So you're looking at the ability for who's ever presenting to deliver what in fact they're saying they can do. Have you done something like this before? I mean, if you haven't done this before, then that, and somebody has, then probably somebody who's done a whole bunch of $30 million deals versus somebody who's done 2 million and you think the project's gonna be 40 million, 30 million. That's what that's part of what you're,
Sure, and
their level of expertise against what they're saying.
but I guess, is there a format for what they provided? Is you guys in like a 100-page booklet and something else, a 3-page thing? Did they both summarize it like page 1? Is there like a form that they specifically?
No,
Okay,
they-
so it could come in any form.
they-
of that. You might have to read 30 pages, that's Thursday. Yeah, that's what it's.
And then when you boil down selections, is the committee still involved when it gets down to the final 3? however the process is.
Again, the process that's outlined right now is it would get narrowed down, and then those who were selected would interview. And an opportunity to then take their concept and present. I mean, we're not asking you to bring in recorded renderings and put a bunch of money out to just give us a concept. But at that next level of conversation, we would be talking about what we would expect us and then to make that next level of all of that.
Would this be a voting process on who you choose? Right. Just recommendations.
It won't come back. The evaluation process defines who's selected at the end of the day. They don't come up with 3 and then it comes back here. It would be that group, that committee.
The main. So that's.
Then what's the length of time for the committee? Like, what is the goal of the selection process? What is it sunset? What else can I
Well,
say?
That's going to depend on the level of response. And you just heard it's a fairly big committee. Coordinating,
Big.
yes, time and date that works and allowing them enough time to look at.
Is there a timeline on the applications now?
Yes.
We have an idea of how many applicants possibly,
I want to know those
How many did you
people
set
that
up?
were interested
Right.
in, and I had over 30. So that I know. I kept keeping a list. No, I need to know. Let me know. Let me know. So, yes, that I know.
So we have 3 people that have said they're interested. We need to recommend 2. Probably shouldn't do it tomorrow, next meeting because of the issues already raised. So are we prepared to? Do you feel like you have enough information out there?
I feel like
You're interested.
I am interested.
Marie, you
As
are.
I process it, yeah.
So I think what we'll do is I'm going to give you 3 a piece of paper to write down who you vote for, and then I'm going to ask you 3 to just step out for a second, and then everybody can vote. That way it's not awkward for anyone. You like that? Are
Are we okay with that?
we okay with that?
No write-ins, because I was gonna just.
Yes. Right.
We need to choose 2.
Just a creative.
And the 3 of you need to write down 2.
He's right.
And you can make yourself one.
You vote for yourself or is that not?
Now, what are we doing? So we're writing down 2. 3 of us are writing down 2.
You're writing down 2 of the 3 of you. That's one of the 2. And then as soon as you get that done, and then I just need you to step out for a second. I know we're fine with that.
No, I'm talking
I
about.
just didn't want
Yeah.
to.
Well, just
Go
write it
for
down.
yours.
There's no weird.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You wanna just,
Everybody
okay,
votes.
okay.
Everybody.
You got 2. And Josh can read them off. Not
I
very.
didn't bring my calculator either.
Why not?
That big, really help.
Well, I like the idea of all things.
Yeah, you can use the board.
All of our, for all of our fans on the live stream.
Yeah, I know.
It's the live draft. You see what's going on?
I'm thrilled that there's more. That we're not struggling with people.
Sri, I was totally kidding.
Oh, I thought you wanted it, but then you like.
You got that for that. Next up. So it's custody of your chain of custody. Let me all one. No rush, take your time.
And we go to dog hall. So I want to take it.
Yeah. And then Bernie went afterwards.
Bill, now that demolition is complete, are things a little bit more peaceful?
Yeah, and there's not as many places for the homeless to hide, so sure.
Good.
Is it gated, Bill? Pardon?
My, yeah, it's all gated, yes, like secure.
Oh, no.
That's okay, we're still the recording system.
Okay. One for sure. And two attacks. Okay. So-
And just know there are no winners and no losers.
So
Okay.
Rory, you're one. And then, what do we pick the number between? Rock papers. We write the number down, they write it down and see.
I think we just need to go around do the backside of those.
To the
papers,
backside of
so
the
you do it
paper.
again.
Okay, I don't think, you're not,
Same system, same process, same cup, same trouble.
it's not gonna be yours. It's not gonna be yours.
Haven't asked if Councilor Nishioka could weigh in.
You don't.
All right, so just one.
This one.
Yeah.
Andrew Robinson. Here.
Things down.
Yeah, right.
I love that we had more than we needed.
Yeah, me too.
That's a good thing.
That's amazing.
Healthy.
What are you doing to me? What is this?
Technique when you want super excited.
Yeah. Winning bowl.
Raffles.
Most suspense I felt.
Yeah.
3 years.
How is it a certified medical signature?
Yeah. It's look at these friends, right?
Gonna be the right person.
Sarah. You were, elected. Thank you.
Scared me. What happened?
Yeah, no. Congratulations, both of you. Thanks so much in advance.
Thank you for saying yes, you guys. Thank you. It's a big deal. Yeah, downtown advisory board representation on that committee is very important. So I would ask for a motion to approve Rory McManus and Sarah Neal to the Block 50 Downtown Salem Opportunity Evaluation Committee. Unless there's any further discussion, all those in favor of the appointment of Sarah Neal and Rory McManus to the Block 50 Downtown Salem Opportunity Evaluation Committee, say aye. Those not, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Okay, moving forward, it was so exciting. Agenda item number 6, information report, starting with Gretchen Bennett. Welcome, Gretchen, who's going to be talking about the revised Salem Revised Code City Camping on Public Property.
Thank you. Thanks for having me and for your service on this board. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Gretchen Bennett. I'm on the staff team here at the city, and I work as a liaison on issues related to homelessness. And what I wanted to make sure to bring to your attention is the very recent changes that the mayor and council have made to the code relating to how we manage unsheltered camping in public spaces. You might know that the Ninth Circuit Federal Court has made some decisions, and then the Oregon legislature codified some of those tenets in the the session 2021 session. And so we've got a legal landscape that directs what the city can and can't do in many cases. And so the city needed to take a look at its code and make sure that the code is compliant with state and federal law legal expectations. So that was the exercise that we undertook, keeping in mind wanting to do our very best within those legal guidelines to balance all of the competing needs in this. So the code has been amended now, and it included a repeal of the sidewalk conduct ordinance that had been passed but had never been implemented. And it rescinded some old language in the code that we felt was clearly not compliant. And then in its place, it put in place a series of essentially restrictions on where people cannot set up to camp. And that includes like all of our residential zones. But as it pertains into downtown, it explains that people aren't able to be in walkways or within a certain amount of space of the doorways. You aren't to be obstructing vision at a corner. And you're not to block the sidewalk. We need to allow ADA access to sidewalks. But it locked in those expectations. And so we have the ability to step in and expect that people aren't going to do those types of things. We also retained an ability to be able to sign an area. It's just designated, this isn't an okay space. If we see an issue with health and safety and chronic challenges that we feel we need to step in and, at least on a temporary basis, interrupt the patterns that are there. So we also have that tool with us. So I wanted to essentially bring that to your attention and then see if there were any questions or information I could provide on that update.
Yeah, when you say interrupt, does that mean that we're allowing police to do more on-hand work and moving some of the homeless along if they break one of these laws that are, or standards that are put in position? What does that allow police to be able to do?
Yeah,
Because
thank
right
you.
now their hands are tied.
Yeah, well, what it allows is, yes, for the police to be able to say, hey, we have a code here that says that you aren't allowed to, let's take the ADA, walk the sidewalk. We have to allow, and so the police are able to say that to a person and say that this isn't a way that you can live. And so we don't want you to be here anymore. But to your point, that's not an offense that's lodgeable in jail. The county jails won't accept that type of infraction as something to lodge in a jail. Frankly, we've seen fines to be relatively ineffective in motivating or changing the behavior. So it really puts to police all of their best skills in negotiation and mediation and conflict resolution, because they start talking with people about, hey, people need to be able to access the sidewalk. This isn't going to work. We can't have you here. Have you talked to housing authority lately? Where else can you be? This isn't working for us. And so it often just becomes a negotiation because there aren't there aren't strong sticks that would affect business behavior, if that makes sense. But we are allowed to enforce those codes. It gives us some ability to manage within that, to the extent our management can. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd just be curious to see how that does work,
yeah,
since that there's a majority of the homeless that really don't care about the laws. So I'd be curious to see how that really does play out.
yeah. It can be really tough. I mean, I have sometimes when people are wonderfully cooperative and they're like, oh, yeah, got it, no problem. And I have other times when people just, hey, I'm in a conversation with one person right now who just really believes this is where she needs to be. We don't think it's safe for her physically to be where she is, and she disagrees, and we're in quite a conflict right now. So yeah, I think it really varies. Yeah,
What is the process for if the public, as they see someone blocking the pathway, sidewalk, and is it a non-emergency?
Yeah.
Number?
Yeah. And I would encourage also, anytime you can, use our online portal. That works really well for us. We have that online portal on our housing and shelter webpage where people can report camping concerns or any of that can go in there, and then we can free up the dispatch space for more urgent crises. If you're somebody who's literally in an unsafe situation, though, like a lot of people, like if they're out in the traffic, that could be a 911 call if it's a safety issue. Of course.
I know, next, no,
So, full disclosure, we had a conversation about this morning.
We
I had a
did.
chance.
We did.
And so one of the issues I look, it's not always homeless that are doing what I consider unsheltered camping.
Yeah.
They're called loiter. Does the rules, if someone said, well, I'm not homeless, does that negate the ability to implement some choices? Because they're not homeless, they're just choosing to hang out.
Right. It's a good question. I haven't yet been able to talk to the attorney since our conversation, but it's my understanding that regardless of your housing status, we have to allow a 36-inch package. And we did write our code amendment in relation to unsheltered camps, but to your point, people generally aren't supposed to obstruct the sidewalk. And if they are planning to for periods, and there's permit processes, we don't know to access. Attempt like if you're gonna do some sort of corner music thing or something, you have to get a permit if you're gonna really block the sidewalk. So I believe we have that authority to be able to ensure a happy travel.
The ability is to have a constant conversation. It's
Yeah.
the ongoing enforcement.
Yeah,
It's very difficult.
it is. We talked about,
Too many places.
too many places and, police only have so many resources. And so if we focus them in one place, we might lose some ground in another place. And so we have to think strategically about how to do that. Okay.
I know we're talking downtown, but you mentioned top that the rules are slightly different in residential areas?
Yeah, we just did a no camping in residence.
And is that zones like planning definition of zones?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So the fact that there's residences downtown don't.
I know, we had that conversation. Correct. It's the purely residential zone is where the camping is not prohibited.
And is that the only zone that has a different
Yes,
set of rules?
yes. Well, and in parks, I forget to think about parks as a zone, so thank you for saying that. You also can't camp.
So if there's an RS, R1, those are all side.
I think so, but I'm not a planning person precisely, but it's the residential zone, yeah. But I know there's like RA, and I guess I don't know if there's a nuance to that. I think I had a copy of the code there for that one. So Gretchen,
Yeah, there's probably 7, 8 camps, campers in Marion Square every day.
there is,
And so,
what's up, like, we aren't allowed to camp there.
well, only because I was just listening to you, but I mean, there's a chance there. It's like a campground right now.
And I regret that we can't be more sustainably impactful. I really do. And we are having success with individual people on a daily basis. We have great stories through our nonprofit partners and through the work that the state staff do, where we've gotten people to be making different decisions, coming out of the parks and the sidewalks. But what'll happen, like, I mean, we've been doing work at Marion Square Park pretty consistently. We'll explain to people you have to be here. If it's an established campsite, which means that it's existed for more than 24 hours, and we're required to provide a 72-hour notice to the person. So we'll issue required notices where appropriate. And then we'll come back where we always front load with resource and referral. So we want to make sure people have access to information about alternative options. And then we'll come back and we'll say, well, you know, gotten the notice, you can't be here anymore. And so then people will leave. But we often see people staying within a general geographic. So there's some folks who generally are in this space. So they might move Division Street, Front Street, Rite Aid, you know, all of the other locations. And then we'll go do that work over there, and then they'll come back over here, and we just have this struggle. All the while we're trying to develop relationships with people to have them exit that cycle. That's what we really want to do. And sometimes we don't have that resource. It's remarkable. I've got some folks that we don't know how to help, that I'm missing a service for, I'm missing a resource for, and other times it's just not being able to for the person to make a decision going into it, and we don't have a way to legally compel them. But you're right, but it's not from lack of trying. You've been down there regularly. The Arches Landscaping Strip, the Marion Square Park, yeah. We're down to full court press, right?
Follow up,
Yes, sir.
thanks, this sounds like the hardest thing in the world to figure out.
Oh, it might, honestly, my blessing.
I was gonna say, like, it's
Yeah.
one.
Thank you, you're welcome.
But looking for, instead of, oh, crud, why is it always this way? Can you highlight maybe like the case studies that were successful? I guess I'm saying, I remember there used to be a lot by the Parkway, and there used to be a lot under Market Street.
Yeah.
How come there's not any?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Those happen to both be properties that were owned by the state of Oregon. And for a while, they weren't clearing anything due to COVID. And so those stayed. The city actually did a lot of lobbying to say these aren't working. It's health and safety concerns, particularly market, that were really pronounced. And so they eventually did decide to conclude camping to allow conclusion of camping. We did a resource fair, referred people to services, some went into services, many remained camping out of doors. I was just talking with a member of our staff who was working in an environmentally sensitive area where we couldn't have camping, and they came across a mother and a newborn. Yeah, and through some conversation over a few days, was able to get in touch with a family member that they kind of acquiesced, because we were like, well, you can't live here. This isn't a workable space. You know, we had environmental issues going on there. You can't live here. And anyway, they reunited with their family. And it's just a joy for that. This worker is somebody who usually their day job is removing garbage. We have a new team that the council just gave to us a year ago that is averaging 22 tons a month of pulling garbage. And so that's their daily job. And so I was so happy for him that he got to be a part of that, getting a baby out of there. I talked to a guy this morning who used to live at Cascade Gateway Park and came to see me in the city manager's office. And then he's been accessing the Safe Park program that we contract with Church in the Park to do, and making good progress there. And then we were talking about his next steps into some kind of housing. And that was pretty neat, you know, because Cascades Gateway to Safe Park to now some housing. So that was cool. But sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
So I'm just curious, is there anyone assigned to keeping track of individuals that are frequented in certain areas that are deciding not to utilize some of the things that are made available for them, and they just go from place to place to place, and then at what point that become punishable by law because you're not accessing any of the resources, right? That are obviously there. We've been given the information, but you're choosing to go from place to place to place because you're taking advantage of those resources. You know, so, well, not all of the resources, but you know, the food, you know what I mean? It's free, I'm gonna eat for free. So why do I need to get a job? Why do I have to work? I'm gonna go from this part to this part. They're gonna keep telling me the same thing, but I'm just gonna eat, and there's not gonna be repercussions. I'm just gonna continue to do that. So,
Yeah.
so is anyone keeping track of that so that they can, you know, those individuals can sort of, I mean, I don't know what the, the right process would be, procedure would be to try and correct that, but is there anyone keeping track of it?
That's a fair question. There is some tracking going on, but it doesn't lead to the outcome that I'm hearing you describe. There's not any legal way that I'm aware of to hold someone accountable in that situation. We don't have a law or a code that would give us the ability to issue any kind of impact to a person for not taking advantage of these resources. We do have a data system. There's something called a coordinated entry data system, and anyone who is willing fills out an assessment. And then all the street outreach partners, there's quite a few organizations that deliver street outreach. They go out and they have conversations and they'll offer resources and they'll make notes, declined service or off, there was an option here, but they declined to participate. And there's notes like that as we try to build histories and understand. But it's for the purpose of trying to encourage people in as opposed to have a negative impact. And I'm not saying your idea is wrong. I'm just saying I don't think there's a mechanism to achieve the goal, like a legal mechanism to achieve what you're describing.
There's a young man across the street from my business, my
Yeah.
barbershop. He was on the streets for about 3 months, right? And he went across the street, there was a labor ready building, and went across the street, got a job, right? He started working. And he was so proud of himself coming in, being able to come in and get a haircut.
Oh, that's cool.
We had a conversation.
Good.
He tells me there's some Facebook that all of the homeless have, right, to come to Salem because it's easy. They're gonna take care of you. It's easy. You don't have to, there's no ramifications, right? And, after he shared that with me, I was just like, wow, I mean, something has to be done. And it's, like you were saying, it's a difficult thing. So I commend you, but
I hear you. It's interesting to think about what's the policy underneath that. I've had people share things with me too, like, well, gosh, my meals are brought here and someone comes and gets my laundry for me, so I don't know why I'm doing it different. And so you start getting into, well, how do you affect the donation decisions that community members make? I mean, here in the downtown, I hear stories of that. Well, gosh, I get the restaurant leftovers that when people leave restaurants, or the neighbors will do things for me. You'll hear people speak about that. You also have to hope at some point, like you think about the natural state of things is it's not logical. You and I as house people would not imagine going through all the uncomfortableness of like sleeping on a sidewalk or not having a rest nearby or dealing with the elements, right? You start thinking about what else is going on there that you would sustain all of those things in order to just have the benefit. Like it's interesting. And I think every situation is so different. I've met people who kind of talk about wanting to live off the grid and just do that. And then there's other people who have some severe and persistent mental illness going on that there's not a lot of ability to really consent to what they're in because they're not tracking what they're doing. Like so many people are so different. But it's interesting to think about what are the policy implications of that. Panhandling, the idea of giving a donation is protected under First Amendment in Oregon. Oregon's free speech laws allow a person to give. So like if I wanted to hand someone $5 or a blanket, that's considered freedom of speech. So it's hard to know how to walk that down. Right. So it's just fascinating to me. Because I hear what you're saying, you want there to be incentive and motivation to make a different decision. Yeah.
With since Metro 110 passed, how have you seen that and the difference between that's
It's a really good question. I was assigned this in March of 2020, and I don't know that I have personal ability to answer that question. I know I hear from many who work in street outreach or our police who are working closely with how many people do have substance use disorders and are using, we have a very severe fentanyl issue, opioid issue, methamphetamine issue, heroin is a constant trouble. And the latest form of meth is very disruptive to the frontal lobe. And so we're really seeing all kinds of problems, but I don't feel like I personally have enough data to answer the before and after question. I know it's a huge importance.
I know the point in time count
Yes.
is a valuable tool and guides numbers for other decisions, but kind of to Q's point. Does it, is it just anonymous every time, or do you have any kind of unique identifiers where you go, X number of this population has increased and then stayed, or it's just discovered how many folks that are unhoused now? It could be all entirely new folks from last year. You see what I'm saying?
I do, that's a good question. But I don't think there's anything that would help us go year to year, and I've never thought about that before. There is, like, you can put in a person's name when you fill out the point in time count questionnaire, but like if I fill it out for Ryan Jones, I don't know if the Ryan Jones I'm talking to in 23 is the same Ryan that I talked to in 22. So I don't think that gets us there, but I would sure love that information. I think the closest is that HMIS system, the coordinated entry data system, is where we have identifiable information where we can tell, okay, this Ryan is still with us. And that Ryan exited to a positive destination. Yeah.
Not on Facebook, but anecdotally, I've heard the same. Tell folks to come this way, and it would just be so interesting to find, is it, they're on this way, on the way somewhere else, because it's just a very nomadic transitory type of thing.
Yeah.
Or no, it's actually increasing that they come and stay.
Right. Right, it's
Maybe
great.
change the policy.
It's a good question. It's clear that it's the largest city in our region. It's a draw. It's where people come. And that's often true in other situations in poverty. You know, you'll pull in where the jobs are. You'll pull in. There's no doubt that there's part of that going on in our region, and that's why we've the regional, the Marion Polk County homeless alliance, and we're trying to encourage solutions across Marion and Polk County so people don't flow to Salem all the time. There's also the data when we do the survey, we ask people like, how long have you been here? Where are you from? And generally nonprofits will report that the majority are from this area, they'll return to this area, like you split your pay back. So they'll tell you the majority are people. But it's hard to have good data. I'm very happy.
Let's ask one to you.
No, I was gonna come back to, you mentioned event planning. I recently had reached out for an event that I was planning for downtown. And it was, even though it's a new code that has processed through, is very informative. The city was really great on telling me why regarding blocking certain things. I was gonna do pop-up tents in all four corners, but they were gonna be too big. So we had to, just reconfigure things, but the city did really well with communicating that, and the why is, it's totally fine, so. Yeah, there you go.
Actually, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, information reports, number 2, downtown strategic plan, Sheree Walker.
So I wanted to start the conversation in preparation for when we go into the next budget cycle for Riverfront. And basically what I wanted to do is start planting the seed in regards to where Riverfront boundaries are more than just downtown players. The strategic plan, and you were on the board at that time. Yeah, it was at a time where we had done a bond to build a convention center. And so we had very little money to put out for other things. And so we engaged a consultant to put together a plan for us that we would be able to build on over time how the money was spent, previously leverage. And so we weren't able to do a lot of funding for big projects, but we did a lot of studies to help inform the projects we should do when we have them. That makes sense. And so the area that we have never really explored or talked about is what we would call AAC for those special people that brought their plan. Thank you so much. Yes, I have you to talk.
That's right, that's right. Which page?
A18. A18 and A19. Yep. You don't need it. You- So one of the goals that you have is to think outside the box, take the information that was created, look at where we're at now, and look at where we might be going. So downtown funding, taking funding away from downtown has always been something that people are afraid of doing. Because we've had so many large buildings vacant. We've had buildings that weren't vacant that are now vacant. It's, oh, I'm sorry.
If I did my back.
Oh. And so we've always had a commitment to having funds for the grant program. But again, the grant program is broader than just downtown. But it's always been hard to think that we could put money outside of the downtown when the downtown has needs. But we're going to be coming upon that time where we're really going to be built out. So we're not going to have the same need for the grants in downtown. And we need to be looking at how do we address the unmet needs and the issues in the northern part of the riverfront boundary. So I'm kind of asking you to think, not downtown for the moment, but to think where we might look and what we might do to improve north downtown for investments. So basically, A18 and A19 talk about the area called the North Waterfront Investment Area. That would be along Front Street, going north, and then of course the plan also had what they called North Downtown Area, which is where Broadway is and where investments have happened there. So this year during the budget process, we make a recommendation, and then city manager and the director of urban development can look at it and make changes or additions to it. And so this year they added money. So I tried to get you the budget, the final one, but it's not ready yet from Michael. There's a line item added like $50,000 to pay for studies to start looking at the railroad issues on Front Street. And again, having to have a contract to look at surveying. Working with the railroad is a separate kind of contract. But what is really interesting is that one of the projects mentioned here and also in Riverfront Plan is Mill Creek redevelopment. So when this plan was developed, they talked about the creek, Mill Creek, in the northern location and a pathway that everybody envisioned being there. And so again, this money was put in the budget to take a look at the condition of the environment for the path up there. So we didn't talk about that. We didn't think about it. But again, the director, and it could be because we were hearing about that cannery project, which through its property is right outside of Riverfront. And so Front Street, is part of our urban renewal area, but it also goes up and continues in to where there's 13 acres of an opportunity for redevelopment, focusing on pedestrian improvements in downtown. But if we had more information from these studies, would that be something we would want to carry forward? Because right now you can't walk downtown along Front Street, along the railroad. There's no infrastructure there. So I wanted to start this conversation because one, there's going to be a line item that you're not familiar with, and I gave you the final budget. And people who know me know I'm always gonna be transparent, and we didn't talk about that, but there's money to start looking at Front Street, at the railroad, at what we should or shouldn't be doing up there, and of course, this recommends we do some type of strategic planning for that specific area. When this particular plan was done in 2011, it recommended several studies. Central Salem Mobility Study, one of the key things you read, the strategic plan says, it's not really easy getting into Salem. In fact, they talk about the circulator. So a lot of these recommendations, we were doing them each year with our funding. The last one being the conversion of one-way to two-way on Court Street. If you took a look at this particular study that was done back when the strategic plan recommended it, we turned around and did it each year. If we had money, we've been doing, we try to make it better, getting in and out of town. So again, I haven't met with Public Works for a while, but if there, I need to regroup with them and see if there's something now more for the north that we should be thinking about, looking at, because again, we can't just stay, can't just keep looking at one. We need to look at the best way to inform and to get redevelopment and to get investments in all of this rural area. We've kind of just been stuck or focused. I mean, it was important and we needed to do it, but I'm really hoping now that a lot of the stuff is built out. We're kind of on a roll. So now we need to start looking, planning for what we want to do in the North Waterfront and North Downtown. We did a housing study for North Downtown right after this came out, and the results of that were the amount of subsidy that was needed to put housing there was not feasible. And if you read it, it said, well, you need to do some kind of housing trust fund, or you have to have some deep funding. And of course, at that time, we didn't have any funding, so that really didn't move forward. But of course, housing now is something that we've been supporting and funding